Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai.
Well, incidentally, tomorrow is a holiday. The full moon is in the constellation of Phalgani tomorrow. The moon represents the mind. There's the moon and there's the sun. The sun gives life. The moon gives healing. The sun, the rays of the sun fall upon the earth, and vegetable life grows, eating the rays of the sun. And it is this vegetable life which nourishes man. But in the processes, the 6 processes of life, one of the processes is crime, disease. And it is in this process that some factor breaks up the rays of life and destroys matter, reduces life to inert matter. So that which was healthy and whole, through the process of disease, through the process of corruption, it breaks down. Life is breaking down. It is the rays of the moon when they fall on plant life in the night. It is that transformation which happens in the soil, in the nourishment which the plants are taking, that the property of healing comes into certain plants. They get this property of healing from the moon. This is the time where the moon is new, fresh in Phalgun Nakshatra. It symbolizes the mind of the disciple. The mind of the disciple. Arjuna is the disciple. Krishna is the guru. And Arjuna is always in a state of double-arrowed attention. The mind of the disciple. The mind of a disciple is like a young child. Vulnerable. Always available. He wants to absorb the rays of the Guru, the being of the Guru. He just doesn't learn with his intellectual center. Each moment something is being transmitted between the Guru and the disciple. And it is this symbolism of this Nakshatra, this time, where the mind is in that state, that vulnerable state, that fresh state, where the innocence of childhood has come back again, because now the disciple, even he may be how old he may be, but he's come to the feet of the Guru to learn. And this symbolizes that the festival of Holi. There are 27 nakshatras. Naksharati means that which cannot be moved, that which is always stable. These are 27 qualities of the mind. And as we raise our consciousness into observing the mind, observing our own psychic structure, our own psychic nature, we suddenly understand these 27 immutable qualities of the mind. It's a beautiful story that these 27 daughters, these 27 nakshatras were the daughters of Daksha Prajapati. Daksha, that which is cunning. Daksha, that which is crafty. The ego is cunning, the ego is crafty. Daksha Prajapati. They were the daughters of Daksha Prajapati. And they were married to Som, the moon. And the moon favored only one of the 27 daughters, and that was Rohini. And he was indifferent to the other 26. Beautiful story. How much of truth is hidden in stories? The moon is the mind, and the moon has lower qualities and it has higher qualities. Som is the higher qualities of the moon. Right? The mind marries the 27 daughters of the ego. How the rishis put the, the eternal truths of life in different stories. And he was more favorable to Rohini, and he spent more time with her. The other daughters went to their father Daksha, and he cursed his son-in-law Som with TB, Kshay Rog. Right? And the moon started withering with Kshay Rog. And suddenly the 27 daughters realized that their husband is going to die. And so they ran to the father again and said, "You do something about it." He says, "I've already cursed him. What can I do? Nothing can be done." So then he said, "I'll change my curse a little. He will wax and wane. He will wax and wane. And every day of the month he will have to change his nakshatra. He will have to change. So he will spend one day with every daughter." The lunar month was born. 15 days the moon waxes, 15 days the moon wanes. But the beauty is this, that you can have only 12 full moons in the year. And the daughters in which the full moon was going to have, they are all fixed, the 12. So in this it is in the Nakshatra Phalgani. Then we have Poshi Purnima in the Nakshatra Pushya. Right? Mrukashish Nakshatra, Maksharvaina. See, so in each of these nakshatras, but the moon never got a chance to be completely full in the wife he loved the most, Rohini. There is no full moon in the Rohini nakshatra. However much the mind desires, however much the mind gains, something will always remain. You cannot get eternal happiness through the mind by fulfilling all the desires of the mind. They are never fulfilled. Till now, no one's has been fulfilled and will never be fulfilled. It is only if you separate from the mind, rise above the mind, bring your presence into observing the mind. The very presence gives eternal happiness. And this is symbolized in the festival of Holi. The story goes that there was this young boy, Prahlad. Alad means happiness. Alad means joy. Prahlad, that happiness, that joy which is never ending, it keeps on going forth, going more and more. And he was the son of a demon. And the name of the demon was Hiranyakashipu. Kashipu means a vessel. Hiranya means gold. The one who is drunk. The one who is drunk with the ego. People are drunk. They are drunk through their money. They are drunk through their power. They are drunk through their knowledge. And he was drunk. And the only way to be free is there must be burning of the impurities. And even though he was the son of the demon, he did not worship his father. He didn't listen to his father. He worshipped Vishnu, the Lord Vishnu. Vishnu is the third force. We have not talked about the three forces. When we talk about the three forces, Vishnu is the third force. Vishnu means that which penetrates everything. Nothing in the world can manifest without the presence of three forces. It is that force which penetrates everything. Of course, my teacher in his book, The Purpose of Birth and Death, has given a beautiful description of the manifestation of the third force. How it manifests. So, the father tried to kill his son, and he tried different ways, threw him off a cliff and trampled him with elephants and God knows what. But nothing worked. So he told his sister Holika. Holika means the sacrificial fire, the yagna of life. The yagna of life. This sacrificial fire can only be lit through pouring our suffering inside. As long as we are identified with our suffering, there is no sacrificial fire. As long as we are holding on to our suffering, there is no sacrificial fire. So, the impurities of the emotional center, the negative part of the emotion, and that symbolizes Hiranyakashipu's sister Holika, the burning of the sacrificial fire. And when the impurities are burnt, Holika dies in the fire, Prahlad does not die. Happiness. Once the impurities goes, happiness is forever. Then the third force descends. Suddenly, we are in a state of consciousness which is free from extremes. And the third force descends in a form which is neither man or animal, neither this side of the pendulum, neither that side of the pendulum. Neither day or night. neither inside or outside. And it comes in the form of nursing. Sea is the king of the animals. Nar, that which leads, Narayan, આપણને દિશામાં લઈ જાય. Ayan એટલે દિશા, direction. So, leading the animal energy, leading the animal and lower energies into something higher. That which is manifest out of that. Again, we can take Hiranyakashipu in another way. Hiranya is gold. The sex energy is gold. But when I misuse the sex energy through excitement, there is an abuse of sex energy. I am drunk with my power. Now, suddenly in life, our consciousness has come to a state where it is neither inside or outside. It is neither man or neither animal. Right? It is neither day, neither night. It is in between. It is not on any extreme of the pendulum. Now, nothing in life can swing us again. We have separated. And in that, the third force descends and the sex energy is transformed. The lower sex energy is killed and it is transformed into something higher. But before that, there must be the sacrificial fire. And Prahlad lives. Happiness, joy is the final outcome. All the impurities have gone away. And so tomorrow the full moon symbolizes this. It is very symbolic. It symbolizes the state of the disciple who's rising into this, who's making an effort for this. So somebody said, you just talk a little bit about Holi. I was wondering what to, not my subject, right? But you had some questions today?
Yesterday.
I just want to add a little on the technique which I gave yesterday, which we talked about yesterday. One day we'll go deeper into this subject, what the 27 nakshatras mean, what 27 qualities, why there are 12 houses of astrology, what do the bhavs mean, right? All this is something to do with something inside of us. Right? And it all relates to our effort to rise into consciousness very deeply, not to use astrology to predict the future. That is that is an abuse of astrology. It's an abuse of astrology, right? But to understand, it is a map of ourselves as a time body. It is our own map. And if it becomes very helpful in self-observation. Suddenly things become much clearer. So one day we'll talk about that. Anyway, just a few things I wanted to add on the technique which we talked about yesterday. Now, in the morning we talked about separating from the centers, observing the eyes of the centers and saying no to the negative eyes. Excuse me. Now, supposing in the morning I remember that I helped someone yesterday. And I'm remembering that, and I'm certainly hypnotized by that eye which helped someone. Koi madat kari. Is it a negative state or a positive state? It is a negative state. Because I helped, the feeling of meritoriousness, the feeling that I did something good, is nothing but self-love, ego. Can you understand? So you have to observe those feelings also. Right? Supposing there is a state where I feel I'm going to get some award or something, where my vanity increases. Again, that is a negative state. So many times we will see that negative states, they wear a, what do you call, white cloth on the outside. Safed chadar udi mein aavi hai. The negative states. They wear a white cloth outside. You see on TV all the kathas. Right? In the first row, everybody is wearing Ram, Ram, Ram. Terrible. And you see, right? So, my guru used to say the attachment center wears the clothes of the detachment center. The attachment center, asakti, anasakti na kapda પહેરીને આવે. I mean, these portrayals of self-love. Portrayals of self-love. You visited Jaipur, I don't know if you visited Jaipur, and there's the city palace in Jaipur, and you go and there are all these huge paintings of Maharajas sitting with their sword and on their chair and with their jewels and all. Right? Vanity. 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 Right? It's portrayals of vanity. And if you get a chance, if you can see sometimes some of Rembrandt's self-portraits, his eyes are open, but as if he's looking not outside, but he's looking at the mind inside. Self-observation. Self-observation. I think there are a lot of drawings of Rembrandt here also in here, no, there are some etchings of Rembrandt here in Cape Town. So these eyes which come in the morning, try to understand the eyes. This is the eye of vanity. This is the eye of self-pity. The eye of justification. Which eyes are coming? It will help into understanding the psychic structure, the psychic nature. It's a long journey, this one. Okay. Right, your question, sir. Yeah.
Shall I just give it to you?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
In this observation and self-help techniques, what is planetary influence? What role does a planetary influence play with our exercises or our being with events? Does planetary influence play some?
In self-observation. In self-observation. We won't say with exercises, but it plays a role with the events of life. Now, it plays a role with every thought, every feeling, every sensation. Right? Now, there is the divine fragment, which we call as the spirit. And the spirit sends its ray through the mind, through the five senses to experience life. God sends his ray through the mind, through the five senses to experience life. This ray of God is called the soul. What is another name for it? Attention. Attention. Right? So I'm looking at you, I'm throwing attention on you. It is that inner God inside which is sending his light through the eyes to experience you. And if he stops sending his light, if there is no attention, the eyes may be open, but I'm there. So attention is the soul. It is the soul. He sends his representative, the soul. The soul is his light only. He sends it out to experience the universe. Right? But the minute the light leaves the sun, it is wrapped up in clothes which are astral, made of the planets. And in very rare cases, very rare cases, material beyond the planets also. So, in Buddha's case, when Buddha was born, the astrologers came and they said that he has all 32 gunas, all 32 attributes. So, there are 7 planets and there are 25 other things outside. And in that these constellations will come. It's a different science. So they said that the attributes of the planets are also there, but also beyond is also there in Buddha. Try to understand, the physical body is made of matter of the earth. The body which surrounds the soul is not made of matter of the earth. It is made of matter of the stars, planetary, magnetism from the stars. Now, this body is given to him so that the soul can experience life. It goes through the experiences of life and returns back to the spirit. This is not a journey of one lifetime. It goes on and on. Right? Now, the soul in this journey, it forms patterns. And those patterns bind the soul, what we call as sanskar, patterns, memory patterns. Memory patterns are nothing but an arrangement of planetary matter. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? And that is why the planets play a very important role. Because the physical body is made of the matter of the earth. When the physical body dies, the planetary body does not die. And the soul and the planetary body, they journey on. Right? Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Now, our whole psychic structure is planetary. We have the power of movement, the power of movement, the power of locomotion, the power of standing upright due to a skeletal system. So that comes from a certain planet, say Mercury. Right? We have the power of blood circulation. That comes from a certain planet, say Mars. Right? You get what I'm trying to say? So everything is in the planets. Everything is in the planets. I'm talking to you right now. Right? So if I have to use my intelligence in the talking, then I'm using Mercury. Right? But if I'm connecting to something higher, then it may be through Jupiter. If I'm pausing and waiting for something to come to me, then it may be through Saturn. If I'm aggressive in trying to tell you something, it may be through Mars. If there is creativity in what I am doing, it may be through Venus. Can you understand? If I am in a position of shrinking a little, like the moon waxes and wanes, I'm giving you something but taking back something, not revealing everything. It is through the moon. You understand? So each moment, in everything that I am saying, in everything that I am doing, in everything that I am thinking, in everything that I am feeling and sensing, the planets are playing their role. You get angry? I get angry on someone. Definitely that anger is made of the magnetism of Mars. You understand it? But I have a desire of creating a beautiful garden. Then that magnetism, where I'm going to move into that creativity, comes from Venus. You get what I'm trying to say? So every thought is made of planetary matter. Now every center has a recording apparatus. So I get angry on you. That anger is allowing the magnetism of Mars to pass through my thoughts, through my emotions. It is forming a pattern in the mind. It is forming a pathway in the brain where it is charging the neurons, right? And I'm expressing that anger. Okay? And all this is going on inside. And in that expression of that anger, I give myself an experience of anger. I may feel that I'm getting angry on you, but before I get angry on you, I have to live that anger for me to throw it upon you. You understand what I'm trying to say? And that anger is recorded within that planetary substance as a sanskar, as a memory pattern. Right? So each moment, every thought that I have, every emotion that I have is being recorded, and it is a feedback process. Now that anger which is recorded and lying inside, it is binding the soul, right? And it wants to create one more pattern of anger, so it is trying to find an instance where it makes me angry again. So that anger which was so much now becomes so much, because now I've got angry twice. Can you understand all this? So everything I do in life is nothing but planetary. Everything. Whether I'm studying for an exam, whether I'm falling in love with someone, whether I hate someone, whether I go into a state of depression, everything is planetary. Whether I get a disease, say I get a disease like jaundice, right? It is planetary. Everything is planetary.
So then, if events come to you, whatever comes to meet you,
yeah, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. I'm trying to come to that. I'm trying to come to that. Now, I got one pattern of anger. This one pattern of anger wants to become two. So it wants to make, only by my again experiencing anger can it become two. Then again I experience anger, again it becomes three. So what does that one pattern do? It is made of material of Mars. How can it make me angry? How can it make me angry? It will invite an event. It will invite an event. Can you understand? Now, these are the unseen strings of life. I'm going in a car, but it wants to make me angry. It will invite an event of a puncture. The minute it invites an event of a puncture, I'll get irritated. These garage people are trying to say. And that one anger has now become two. Right? But we don't see the unseen strings in life. We take that as a haphazard event. That how can a puncture come to meet me? But the puncture is meeting thousands of people at the same time just now on the earth. It has nothing to do with me. If that anger was not lying within me, it would not have come to meet me. Can you get what I'm trying to say? So all the events which are coming to my life only come because of the patterns lying inside. They are the causes of events. They are the causes of events. Whether the events bring me happiness, whether the events bring me pain and suffering. There is no other factor to blame. A few days ago I put something on Facebook. If you are blaming someone, you are lying. So today somebody has written that, please tell us then what is the truth. Because if I'm blaming somebody else, I'm not taking responsibility that that planetary substance within me invited the event. And every event which comes to meet me in my life is because of those planetary substances. Now, when we start the practice of self-observation, we are separating, something is separating from the mind. Something is observing the mind, the intellectual mind, the feeling mind, the sensing mind, the moving mind. I am observing myself. Can you see? And I see that I can't sit for a single second in the whole day. I have to keep on doing something. Right? In the end, if I don't have anything to do, I'll take everything out from the cupboard and put it back in the cupboard. A lot of people do it. Right? So, I'm seeing that this behavior of mine, I am conscious to that, is due to a certain pattern. And when I understand the science of that pattern, I'll say Mercury is predominantly involved in that pattern. That is why I can't sit for a single second. You get what I'm saying? So then this is a study of esoteric astrology, not the run-of-the-mill astrology. Right? This is esoteric astrology. The astrology which takes us on the path of higher consciousness, on the path of freedom. Freedom from astrology. Right? So now the puncture has come. I am getting angry. I observe it. And I'm sitting there observing it, and I say, I'm not going to say I to this anger. It may come up, but I'm not going to sign the check. I'm not going to say I got angry. I am observing it is angry. It is angry. There's this separation between I and it. That anger cannot make me angry. So, it cannot increase its potency. On the contrary, it decreases, because that one anger which came out of the unconscious mind to make me angry due to the event now disintegrates. And the energy which is in that anger, which went into that pattern, it is suddenly freed and it rises up the spinal cord. This is called Kundalini Shakti. The rise of the Kundalini. It is freedom from the pattern. Right? That energy has been, for thousands and thousands of years, it has been locked in that pattern. And that pattern was mainly martial. But there could be some angers which are not martial. They could be cunning angers. You see? Saturnine. Right? So this planet will have its own thing. This whole psychic structure is planetary. The whole of astrology, the 12 houses are nothing but my emotional center. That is why they are called in our astrology as Bar Bhav. Bhav means emotion. They are the 12 emotions which man is capable of. The moon going through the nakshatras, the 27 points of the mind, all this goes together. So as this is the inner science of self-observation, as I separate from my lower psychic nature, I'm observing my lower psychic nature. What I'm doing is nothing, it is but astrology. I suddenly understand the relation of outer events to my inner states. That is why I gave you this exercise yesterday. If in the morning for that 1 hour, half an hour, you are observing, not allowing yourself to say I to any negative state, the events have to change. The events which come to meet you that day have to change. Right? Yesterday we were going somewhere and there was no parking, and Mahavir took the car and one car came out and Mahavir put his car inside. I say, when the events change, this is what happens. This is what happens. Right? Then it is not your desire any longer. You're free of all that. And his desire works in the right way. Works in the right way. But first you have to burn on the fire. Holi, you have to burn on the fire of Holi. Right? The impurities have to go. And these have been gathered through lifetimes. Right? It's not a journey of one lifetime. I remember I called to meet the American guru E.J. Gould. And he's written a set of books called The Secret Talks. Beautiful books. But very difficult to read because he has put them in complete American slang. So by the time you're finished reading each sentence, right, he's just purposely tried to hide everything which is written in very typical American slang. He has written a book called Alchemical Sex, where he talks of the sex act, what is the higher sex act, how to transform the sex. It's a beautiful book. But again, like I said, he has his own way of writing. So I've been over many, many years, I've been reading his book since 1984, and 2012 I got a chance to go to meet him. Yeah. And he lives in a small place near 2 hours drive from Sacramento, Northern California. And beautiful person. And we went there and he saw me, and then he ran into his room, and he came out wearing a cowboy hat and a gun and everything, and he was rolling the gun like this in his hand. Right? And he's telling me that, do you know how to roll the gun like this? And so I said, no, I don't know. He says, you know you have forgotten. I said, you know you have forgotten. He said, like you go to sleep at night, and wake up in the morning, I can see somebody dying in this life and waking up in the next life. So he's talking about a different level of consciousness. Different level of consciousness. He said, do you remember when we were together? So in this place we were together. I said, I don't remember. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not a journey of one lifetime. It's not a journey of one lifetime. But we can at least rise in consciousness. We can separate from our, what you call, psychic nature. We can be a witness to that which is not a part of the material body. And if our consciousness is stuck to that body, if we have learned to hold our consciousness in that emotional body, the material body of the earth dies, the planetary body remains, and now it has a consciousness with it. Now that it's not very far off. At least can we do this much? Can we learn how to die?
Where did he meet you before?
Huh? No, first time I met him. I read his books, I've been reading since 1984. Actually in 84 I was in America. And then I got one of his books in my hand and I was so shocked. That book really was something. So by then I was in New York and I was leaving in a few days. So there was no way of going back to California to meet him. And I remember in those days, of course, money and everything was, I couldn't just catch a flight and go to California. So I phoned him and he sent me a parcel of books which I could carry with me. They just reach you because in those days India, we didn't know what was Federal Express, and also he sent it by Federal Express. And over the years I have studied his books, right? I have not read them one time, I've read them many, many times. And very difficult to read, very influenced by Gurdjieff's thought. Like I also, what I speak, a lot of it is 70-80% is influenced by Gurdjieff's thought, but beautiful books, beautiful books. The Secret Talks, I think volumes 1 to 10. And he's trying his best, he's contacting everybody who bought those books to give them back to him so he can burn them. He doesn't want anything to remain.
Is it because consciousness is not ready for that, or we not yet?
Sometimes when a person is now ready to go, he wants to dissolve everything, no photographs, nothing, everything should go, right? So I think he's one of them. And he's living in this small place, there are few people around him, but he does have workshops on the net nearly every day, at least a couple of times a week, and you can log into his workshops and listen to him. But you'll have to, it's very out of the ordinary. If you're very conditioned by our Indian gurus, then you'll think him mad or something, right? So, very, very out of the ordinary, right? So, but there's real truth there, real truth there. And he's pretty old, so it would be worth, at least if you can't meet him, at least experiencing some of his workshops on the net.
And when he said to you, I've met you before, you've forgotten, what did he mean by that?
Huh?
What did he mean by that? Did he met you in another lifetime and he remembers and you
Yeah,
remember?
yeah. He says, I remember, but you don't remember.
Yeah, right.
No, it wasn't worth elaborating because he's telling me you know how to use a gun. Yes, you were saying something?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is that the use of "you've met before" is a metaphor in a manner of speaking.
It could be, yes, it could be. Very true, very true. Right. Because when we say meet before, it means personalities. And when they say met before, it means essence. Right? And when we die, the essence remains, the personality is gone. Right? So, you're very true. Very true. Okay, we'll take these questions.
When you say essence, it's not unique to each individual.
Each essence is planetary unique to each individual.
While we're alive, then it goes back to the whole.
No,
It's always separate.
because it is binding the soul. Unless in that consciousness we dissolve all the patterns which are binding the soul is not free to go back where it came from. It is only through consciousness. Right? So everybody has an individual essence. But there are essential types.
Then you speak about the fragments. There was one God or whatever, and then he provided the fragments,
Yeah.
and then
So that is spirit. The fragments is spirit. The spirit wants to experience life, so he sends out its ray. The ray is covered in planetary matter. So that ray, that ray is the soul, but covered in planetary matter, that planetary matter forms patterns. So till the soul, which is bound in that planetary matter, it dissolves all the patterns, it cannot return back to the spirit. I get angry on you, I'm increasing the binding because the pattern is increasing. Right? So I have to see, it is through observation that I'm free of the patterns. Right? Increasing of consciousness.
I want to understand that when you say we all want to get in touch with our divinity,
Right?
that seems to imply that divinity is one, not millions.
Exactly. So that is the riddle over there, because in the Upanishads we have a slok where we say that one became many, but what is the difference between many and one? So then they have put a riddle over there. The one is the many and the many is the one. So there you can't this thing, but this is just a way of putting it, a sort of cosmology behind everything, that there was a divine wholeness. That divine wholeness became a divine fragment, which we call a spirit, right? That spirit wanted to experience life. It sends out its ray. That ray is what I'm looking at, you, just now. That ray cannot remain in the pure form of the spirit. It has to wear clothes of the planets, planetary matter. Those planetary matter form patterns in my normal living, right? And those patterns, unless we are free of those patterns, we cannot, the ray cannot go back to the spirit. The soul cannot go back to the spirit. And the only way to be free of patterns is by increasing your consciousness and observing the patterns and allowing them to dissolve. This is in a nutshell. I know it's not very clear. That's all I can do. Right? Okay. When Ramakrishna went into the state of samadhi, was his emotional center active and all else shut down? It's very difficult for a person like me to put a judgment on what Ramakrishna did, because he was at such a high state, The higher emotional center, not the emotional center, the higher emotional center. And this is my reading, don't take it as a judgment. There is no way I can judge Ramakrishna, right? But this is my reading. That we have not talked about the two higher centers, and his higher emotional was active. And that is what allowed him to go into a state where the intellectual, the emotional would go into a state of suspension and he would experience a kind of divine samadhi. Right? Just imagine if you were to take Ramakrishna to a doctor today, what would the doctor say? He would say he's suffering from epilepsy. Right? He would say he's suffering from epilepsy. You have to understand that there's 100 years between us and Ramakrishna. 100 years between us and Ramakrishna. In 100 years, the brain has changed completely. The capacity of the cells of the brain, man's understanding has changed dramatically. What was true for Ramakrishna cannot be true for us today. Today, if we want to go into a state of consciousness, it has to come through balance of all the sides of life. The emotional, the intellectual, the moving, the instinctive. In those days, it was a different life. There were no cars, right? Communication was different. Man's brain didn't have so many thoughts, right? The intellectual center was not so active. So there was a way of opening the higher emotional center, and I think he was born with it. Because it started happening to him at a very young age. And he would go into this samadhi, but for us today, samadhi is an imbalance, right? We have to, and if you say I'm going into meditation and samadhi, for me I'm going to say it's a complete imbalance. Right? Very true for Ramakrishna, not true for us today. Today, the samadhi must be every moment of living. I'm talking to him, inner state of samadhi. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? You don't have to specially go into that state. There is a balanced life. I'm not saying Ramakrishna was imbalanced. Now, in Ramakrishna's life, there is a possibility that the higher intellectual had not opened. The higher intellectual had not opened. And for that he met a Vedanti called Totapuri. Right? And this Totapuri, he made him his guru. Maybe Ramakrishna was spiritually more advanced than Totapuri, but he still made him his guru. Now Ramakrishna, his whole inner one-pointedness was through the worship of Kali. Right? So he had reached that state. The technique was through the worship of Kali. Like, Kali is the inner observing eye. Ishta, our Ishta. Right? And it is through that the other eyes died and the higher emotional center opens up. But maybe the higher intellectual had not opened, and it is with Totapuri. And Totapuri told him that when you close your eyes, what can you see? And he says, I can see the statue, the murti of Mother Kali. I can see her. She is alive there. And Totapuri said, take a sword and cut off her head. Take a sword and cut off her head. And Ramakrishna tried so many times. Tears would come in his eyes. He said, I cannot do it. I cannot do it. And then they say, at one point he was able to muster the courage and he cut off the head of that mother to whom he had worshipped all this time. And in that maybe the higher intellectual also opened. So in us, for me, spirituality today is a balance of all the centers. There must be inner balance through consciousness. Right? Those were different days, different times. We can't compare. Right? So it's okay. We understand his life. We take what is proper from his life. We understand his explanation of the truth. But to say that we want to go into samadhi, then we are talking of the old, backward ages. Backward ages. Right? Our samadhi is the samadhi of understanding every moment in our life. Just live our normal life in a state of samadhi. I'm talking to him, I don't allow my self-love to manifest. If the self-love is pulling me, I observe it and be free of it. That's samadhi. Right? I don't have to go into a special state of samadhi. Right? So all else was shut down, but maybe the higher intellectual had not opened. It opened to him after he met Totapuri. When I go to sleep, I have no awareness as to when I fall asleep. The point at which I fall asleep just happens in an instant. And I am unable to catch this point at which I am, however, aware that sleep only comes when no thoughts are there. When there is no picture, sleep happens. Is it good to live in isolation for a while anyway? Oh, that's another question. You eat at night? No. What you can do, because you don't eat, you know the first exercise? Lie down on the bed, put on the music, put a timer for 20 minutes and do the first exercise for 20 minutes. Right? It should switch off after 20 minutes or automatically go into 3-step rhythm. In the normal rhythm. So after 20 minutes you're breathing with the normal rhythm. Turn on the right side and go to sleep. Right? Enter into sleep actively. What happens is we feel sleepy and we go to sleep. The idea is to be active actively enter into that, what you call, vacuum state, that nothing state, so that as we enter, there is a slight amount of consciousness when at the point of going to sleep. We note down that at this point I went to sleep. You understand what I'm trying to say? So good practice would be, you do the first exercise, do it for lying down on your back for 20 minutes. Maybe if you find 20 minutes too much, start with 10 minutes. Turn on the right side, go to sleep. Another thing which if you don't want to do the first exercise, do the gold nugget. Do the gold nugget, breathe out completely, hold the breath out. Hold the breath out. Don't take shallow breaths. Right? With each time you feel the need to breathe, breathe out and hold. Breathe out and hold. Try to come to a state where 2 rounds of the music, that is 10 seconds you're holding. So 40 seconds you're holding, then 10 seconds you're taking short breaths, but in those short breaths you're not breathing in, you're only breathing out. Try to come to a state where there is as less oxygen possible in the lungs. And at many times that balanced oxygen will transform into ozone, which is left in the lungs. And in that you will go to sleep in a deep trance, this very samadhi which you're talking about with Ramakrishna. Right? So you can do this or you can do that exercise. One of the two, you can do them at night. The quality of sleep will change. At some point, for a long time, as you fall into sleep, at least in shallow sleep and medium sleep, you will be able to hold your consciousness. As you enter into deep sleep, you will lose your consciousness. Right? So you can practice that. So I would prefer you do the first exercise. But if you feel like doing the gold nugget, you can also do the gold nugget. Right? We are not yet ready for that samadhi which happens through the transformation of balanced oxygen into ozone. We are not yet ready for that. But it's a very shortcut to samadhi. Very fast shortcut. 100 years of meditation you'll do in 5 minutes. Right? That fast. But you have to have the guts to keep breathing out, and don't worry if that you can't, a point may come where you will die or something, because the minute that is, before that you will become unconscious and you will start breathing. Right? So don't worry about that. Take some tonic. But it's worth doing. Right. Try to observe what is happening when you go to sleep. What happens to the intellectual center? What is happening to the emotional center? Right? The thoughts don't completely stop. Right? We have 120 thoughts per second. But they go down, and in deep sleep, hopefully they should come to 30 per second. Right? But what does stop is that the language which we create out of the thought stops. The thought does not stop. The thought is there as a picture. Supposing you speak one language and I speak another language. Our thoughts will be very similar, but I will chatter those thoughts in my language and you will chatter those thoughts in your language. This inner chattering which is going on is not thoughts, it is chatter in language. But the thought happened before the language came. Am I getting across in this? You understand? So, and before the thought there will be something symbolic which will go into the thought. So what you're seeing calms down is not the thoughts. You're seeing the chattering calm down. The chattering is happening in the small part of the conscious brain, the conscious mind, right? So that those thoughts which we are making into language, we get 120 thoughts per second, out of which we convert 16 into chattering, into language, 16 into language, right? Out of that, in our present state of awareness, we are only aware of maybe 1 or 2 thoughts. We don't realize what kind of energies those thoughts are loaded with. And most of the time they are loaded with excitement, right? Aggressiveness. So see that what you see is the chatter calming down. Try to go beyond the chatter into thought, because naturally the chatter is calming down when you go to sleep. And just hold on for some time. Don't allow yourself to go into sleep. Hold on, right? And just go beyond that small boundary where the thought was becoming chatter, and you will suddenly enter the world of thought. It is like entering into a different part of the brain, which till now we are not generally allowed to enter. But when we are dreaming in life, in the night, that part is allowed to come out to us. You get what I'm saying? So it is a good practice. Just now you're seeing that the thoughts are calming down. It is not the thoughts which are calming down, it is the language which is calming down. Now go beyond the language into the space of thought. And if you do this exercise, it will be very, very helpful at night. But if you've eaten at night, you can't do it. So try it out. Is it good to live in isolation for a while? Anyway. I mean, why this question? Not tired of the wife, no?
What I'm thinking is that, if one is in a social environment, you have a lot of interaction, and that creates more and more thoughts. So if you live in an isolation for a while, just to get that in control, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. And do it if you can for 10 days every year. Go somewhere where no one knows you. Right? No phones home. No phones. Leave your phones. Drop all the masks which you wear. You're not a husband, you're not a son, you're not a father. There. So drop all that. With that, drop all the worrying. Because if you're going to go there and worry, then it's not worth going there. Right? So when you drop everything, you drop everything over there. So suddenly now you're free of so many masks that the personality puts on us. Right? Arrange your day, what you're going to do for those few days. Don't waste your time. How much time you will put into self-observation. Spend a lot of time in nature, right? Where you are listening to the birds, listening to the waves of the ocean, sensing the wind. Try to see the branches of a tree or some plants and try to just merge your consciousness into them, as if you become them. Take long walks. Take long walks. Like in the first lecture, I talked a lot about walking, how to use the 3 SRB rhythm in walking, what to do while you're walking. So you're not just walking, you're working on yourself at the same time, right? Make this thing that you will read for only half an hour or 3/4 of an hour every day, not more. What you want to read also, no TV, right? Nothing else. Go into isolation, it's worth it. It's worth it. Last year I had this very hectic trip of the US, and every year I take out 4 days to go and live with an uncle, and those are my 4 days in between these 2 months where I take a holiday. So I go for 2 months and 4 days is my holiday. So last year my uncle said that I'm not here, I'm going to France for a holiday. So I had those 4 days free in between. And then a friend gave me his cabin, which was in the mountains, right? And so there was no one around. There was no one around. The next cabin was more than a mile away. Right? And I was up there in the mountains for 3 days totally alone. Totally alone. Right? And there was a beautiful stream going nearby, and the cabin was on the stream. And it was pretty cold, so when the sun came out, I would go and sit on the rocks and just become the stream. Let the sound go into you and just dissolve yourself in the sound of running water. Right? This is one of the very ancient Sufi techniques, dissolving yourself in the sound of running water. Right? I would take walks. There was no need of cooking anything because he had put everything in the fridge for 3 days. I just had to cook it in the microwave for 2 minutes and eat it. Right? Eat only 1 meal a day. Right? Don't have 3 meals a day. Have only 1 meal a day. You can keep some dry fruit or fruit. If you're feeling hungry, just have a little. Right? And make a regimen. It will be a beautiful thing when you're working on yourself all alone in isolation, no connections. Those 3 days there was no internet, no phone, nothing. Right? So think about it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Because all the regular masks of life drop. We are no one over there. No one. I think we are nearly through, so anything else, I won't take up anything. I wanted to talk a little bit about our psychological country today. Yeah.
Vijay, you earlier in your explanation about language as being part of the kind of chatter that goes on.
Yeah.
And before that, you were referring to a person who came before us 100 years ago, and you said some of the techniques employed by this person was backwards. And just looking at the word backwards, it was backwards in terms of where we are.
Where we are.
It was appropriate for that particular time. So it's not really backwards, it was appropriate for that time.
Not backwards in that sense. Thank you. So we talk about self-observation. He will talk about worshipping Kali. So for us, Kali is the observing eye. We want to do it in a scientific way. It is the same thing. It is the same thing. Right? But I want to take spirituality out of all these mystical experiences. Going into samadhi and all that. It should be the normal everyday affair. Right? Just a normal everyday affair. Just living your normal life. And when we read Ramakrishna's life, he sees what we call flock of swans, he goes into samadhi. Somebody takes the name of Kali Mata, he goes into samadhi. It's a beautiful state to go in, but also there is no control. There is no control. So, for me, it must be balanced in your normal life.
So, why was he asked to cut off Kalima's head? Why was he asked to cut off the head of Kalima?
He was so attached there, that final attachment would not break. And attachment is identification. Attachment is identification. So the higher intellectual center was not opening up. This is my reading. This is from where I am. In no way I can judge Ramakrishna. Right? But this is my reading that the higher intellectual would not open till out of the head. And then he realized that and the knowledge of God does not come till we are free of the one individual, that observing eye inside. knowledge of the higher truth.
Could it also be that with the Mother Kali's neck being cut off, that it's a representation of Mother Nature not wanting you to be free to reach that state where you recognize your...
There was a final thing hanging on, something, and that final knot had to be cut off. And when you read Ramakrishna's life, you see he practiced through many different ways, even after achieving the truth. He went back and again he went back, just to make it sure that every way reaches to the same place. So he did that. But there is this beautiful story, and I don't remember the story in fullness. Maybe he remembers, I don't remember it. But I remember this, that Totapuri told him, you have to cut off the head. And I can understand that from the emotional, even the higher intellectual has to open up. Both the same.
પછી એ માર્યું તેમણે કાચની બોટલ પડી હતી ખૂણામાં અને તોડી અને કે અહીંયા કરે એમ કરીને પછી એ સાથે સરસરાટ મન.
Right.
I was just, a few sessions ago, you mentioned that somebody could actually kill somebody, and as long as they're in a state of consciousness, but I think my answer to that would be that a person that has a state of consciousness would actually have no reason to kill somebody, unless maybe they were defending themselves or something. Remember when you said that?
No, I think you got it wrong. He asked a question on prayer, and in that he said whether you can manipulate other people through prayer. So I said that through prayer you cannot manipulate other people, but there are techniques of manipulating other people through different forms of black magic.
Yeah, no, but before that, 3 or 4 sessions ago, you had mentioned. Did anybody remember this, or did I just hear it wrong?
No, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of thought I heard you say that if you commit, you were referencing sins, if you commit a sin and and you have consciousness, it's not a sin.
Permit a sin?
I must have been in another lecture. I was astering out.
No. What I said, that if you are observing the anger, right, then that anger dissolves.
Right.
You're not sowing the seed of anger for its repetition again. Right. If you sow the seed, then you've committed a sin. Right. For repetition. But if you, in that state of observation, now there will be many stages in between. I'll sow half the seed. It's not going to be overnight that I'm free of it. But I come to a state where I'm not sowing any new seeds. If I'm not sowing any new seeds, then I'm not creating any new bondage. The old patterns will come out, and as I observe them, I'll be free of them. Right? But I won't create new patterns that increase the bondage. That is what I think. That is what I said. Yeah, you were saying something?
I read somewhere about the Nakshatra, a bridge between the lower and higher. Have you...
The what chakra?
Antakarana, Antakarana. Looks like
Antakaran.
Antakaran.
It's not a chakra.
Is it not a chakra?
Yeah, it's not a chakra. Karan means an instrument. The 5 senses are the outer instrument. The mind is the inner instrument. Antar means inner, the inner instrument. Right? So, this is called as Ashtada Prakruti, the 8 parts of Prakruti. 8 parts of Prakruti. 5 parts are external, right? The 5 senses, right? And Man, Buddhi, Ahankar. Mind, Manas, Buddhi, intelligence, Aham, the I consciousness, right? These 3 are the inner instruments. So there are 5 outer instruments and 3 inner instruments. This is called as Ashtada. Man, the soul, is bound by Ashtada Prakruti, the 8-fold nature. The 8-fold nature is in the 5 outer instruments and the 3 inner instruments. Right? So that is the Antakaran. The 3 inner instruments constitute the Antakaran. Some people take a 4th instrument, that is all the memory patterns, which they call Chitta. So they say Man, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankar. Right? Yeah.
I think it was yesterday you referred to worrying.
I haven't talked about worrying. Today the subject was worrying.
I just wanted to know, do you distinguish between concern and worry? Is there a difference?
If I am frightened, right? I'm frightened that he is going to hit me, right? At what point do I shift from holding that fear into worrying about it? It's a thin line. Yeah. Fear is of the instinctive center. I am observing fear. Worrying is a negative form of imagination. My son is ill. So there is a concern, there is fear. Right? There's a concern. At what point does it start going into negative imagination? Right? So holding the concern, holding the fear is right. That is dharana. Right? But the minute I am identified what will happen if this happens, later on we will realize that nearly all worrying is not concern about the other person, it is concern about self. Can you see? A young child has died in a car accident. A young child. He's a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, just married 1 year ago. And small, couple of months old child. I go to pay my condolences to the father. The father is saying that look at children these days, they don't care about us, they do things which give us suffering. Can you see the self-love? Can you see the self-love? Right? Worry has self-love in it. What will happen to poor old me? Right? We feel we are concerned about the other. We are not concerned about the other. We are concerned about if that happens to him, what will happen to me? Right? Whilst just holding the concern without going into imagination, without allowing the thought process to overtake you, then you are in a different state. You are in a different state. Stop over here. Thank you. Tomorrow is a holiday. We'll meet day after with God's grace.